Okay, in this particular lesson, we're going to take a look at the various components that make up the Red One camera, and we'll identify all these various components. And then after we kind of go through the whole spectrum on what each and every component does and how it interacts with one another as we put it all together, we will actually assemble this particular camera and give you an idea of what the total assembly package will look like. Thing we're going to take a look at is the Red One camera body. This is where all the action happens right here with this particular unit. On the side of the body, you will see various in and outputs that will include your audio inputs. You will see outputs to go to a monitor. You will see outputs that go to an LCD screen as well as our viewfinder that all get attached to the side of the body here. On the back of the camera, you'll see inputs that will include your power as well as the external drive unit, as well as our menu buttons, and we'll get into that in a little bit of a later lesson. Our record button is going to be on the left side of the body here on this camera. And before we put things together, just to let you know that there's a few brackets that we've already pre-attached to the body. This bottom bracket right here, which is for our mounting bars, has already been pre-attached, but that can be removed with 4 different Allen bolts. We also have these top brackets right here that can be removed as well. That are pretty much set in place for our top mounting bars on the Red One body. There's going to be a variety of handles that we can place on the camera, and I highly recommend, as we'll show you the assembly process in just a bit, that you utilize the handles on the camera in order just for ease of picking up the body, because it is a very heavy unit. And as we begin to stack on different parts of the assembly on the Red One camera, it will really get significantly heavy. The next major component that we will mount to the Red One will be the lens. This is our smallest lens that we're going to utilize for the Red One, which will be our 18 to 50 millimeter lens. Now, this particular lens, just like most of these professional lenses, have 3 rings attached to it that will adjust various things on the lens itself. Our first ring will be our focus ring on the camera. Our second ring will operate our zoom as you see it moving in and out, changing our focal length. And then we also have the iris. You might see the iris opening and closing as I move the adjuster on that too. So those 3 rings have various functions on each lens that you're going to encounter. We normally want to keep it covered up on both ends of the lens. Mounting bars are kind of the foundation of how we put all these accessories together. On the bottom part and top part of this camera is where we're going to slip our mounting bars to. And essentially that'll give us the ability to mount various items onto this camera, so you can see the various lengths between the bottom set and the top set. One of the things we want to take note of with these bars is we don't want to beat them up and bang them up and throw them on the ground and get them scratched, because essentially they're supposed to slide very smoothly in and out of their mounting case and brackets. And if we have them dinged up and scratched up, it just won't be able to slide very freely through when we start the assembly process. So that's the very important part of piecing this particular camera together. On the lens itself, and getting back to the lens function of the Red One camera, this is going to be our follow focus unit. And as I pointed out, that focus ring, that first ring, really is affected by what happens here on the follow focus. So as you see that gear turning back and forth as I move the knob right here, that will turn the focus ring on the lens and obviously adjust our focus on the camera. It can be adjusted to any type of lens we might utilize, because there are some bigger lenses that we will mount onto the Red One camera. So we have the swivel here that will allow us to mount and attach that front gear to the proper size lens that we're going to work with. Here's where we're going to insert into our mounting bars on the Red One, and it just kind of simply slips into place. In front of that, you're going to find our matte box. Our matte box essentially helps kind of isolate some of the light that's coming into the lens. It mounts again right here through these mounting bar mounts. We can also have the ability to drop in a filter into the matte box in order to have maybe a neutral density filter or some other polarizing type filter in order to cut down the amount of light coming into the camera. If we're in an outdoor setting, we can also put other type of color filters on there to kind of maybe affect the color and the look of the image we're trying to produce. Along with this particular matte box, we want to utilize this particular ring, which goes in place right here, and just kind of acts as another buffer and another way to take out some of the light coming into the outside of the lens. So that's going to insert right there when we put it together in our assembly. Another important item on the camera is going to be your external storage. This exactly is where our Data is going to be recorded to, as well as the CF cards, which I will show you in just a sec. As you see, we have the import for the data port on the hard drive. We also have ports that are going to allow us to download the footage that we collect on this particular hard drive into our computers. We also have this essentially isolated into a little bracket, and this bracket mounts to another secondary bracket that goes onto the mounting bars of the camera, as well as it gives us a mount for our battery. So if I take one of the batteries, and we do have 4 in this particular package, it'll simply slip into that little mount, click into place, and lock into place. We can unlock it with that little lever there. That's gonna lock and unlock just like that. We do have a charger for each of those batteries, and it will look something like this. Simply click into the groove, like such, in order to charge 2 batteries at a time. We have a power cord that attaches to our power unit, and just a simple on and off switch. And these lights will indicate, once they're a solid green, will indicate that the batteries are fully charged and ready to operate. We can also use this unit as a base power unit as well. You notice we have a port right here, and we can take one of our cables that are part of the assembly package here, and if we have the ability to plug into a power source, again through our power cord, we can plug in our camera and have it just run directly with power off the power pack versus having to load a battery on it, and that'll happen through this particular port right here. Other storage that we're going to utilize to record data for the camera will not only be our external storage, but will come through these CF cards, or compact flash cards. Basically, a compact flash card are all pretty much the same size. Internally is where you're going to find the differences in terms of storage space. We have 16 gigabytes in capacity. We do have the ability to get 32 and 64 gigabyte cards in order to store some of the footage that we shoot out into the field or in a studio setting. I'm going to move to the viewfinder on the camera. As you can see, it almost looks like a lens that you might find on other type of cameras that you would be working with. We have the attachment that's going to go from our viewfinder to our camera body. We have your eye inlet, and that can be adjustable as far as focus is concerned. And we also have these buttons, which will affect really the brightness of the LCD, as well as various other functions on the viewfinder. Now, aside from the viewfinder that we have available to look into and check our image, we also have an LCD screen that's going to attach to the Red One camera. As you can see, it's about a 5-inch LCD unit. It just simply screws into place through a specific bracket that we'll show you in just a second. And we have the connection for our cable, which goes from the output of the LCD to our input on the Red One body. And we do have an on and off switch for the LCD attached right there. Here's the bracket that's going to be utilized to mount to the camera itself. Swivel type mount. This is the threaded part that's going to go into the bracket that mounts to the top of the body of the Red One. And this portion right here is simply going to be utilized when we screw on the LCD and kind of act as a locking point as well for the LCD. We can lock whatever angle we want on this bracket with that lever right here. So if we move the lever to a certain position, it can simply just lock in place and give us a specific angle that we might need for whatever application we want to customize on the camera. Same thing goes for the viewfinder. We have a very similar bracket that will swivel and lock in place for a specific angle you might want. These are the threads you're going to go and mount into the mounting point of the camera, and this is the base you're going to essentially have the viewfinder screw into, and just locking it down in place with this. Cables is another important element that you're going to see in the assembly process. This is one of our power cables. Just like I was picking up the power unit right now, this is the cable that's going to be utilized for that, as well as coming off of our battery powering unit. Cables will look like this. They do have a red dot on each end of the cable, and it's going to be a simple red dot to red dot matchup from the cable end to whatever particular inlet we put onto the camera itself. We do have the same type of cables, but they're going to be different in size as far as the cable connection and even the length. That will help connect our viewfinder and our LCD screen to the Red One body. So you can see there have maybe some different configurations to the power cable, but they do kind of serve the same purpose as far as connecting our viewfinder and LCD screen to the Red One body. We do have a couple of similar mounting brackets. We will utilize these mainly for mounting our battery and our storage unit. And as you can see, these brackets will go onto the mounting bars, and then we can simply screw in whatever particular accessory we want or need for the Red One assembly. Now, within our assembly package, we do have a tool set of Allen wrenches. There really are only a couple of sizes of Allen bolts we have for the Red One camera, but we have a pretty significant tool set that goes along with it. These Allen bolts, like I say, maybe have a couple of different sizes that you're gonna see for the Red One camera that will help mount some of the various brackets and some of the other accessories that we're gonna bolt onto the camera itself. One little accessory that you will see, but we may not really utilize a whole lot, is this shoulder mount. We can attach this to the bottom bracket of the Red One body, and we'll actually be able to utilize this as a shoulder mounted camera or a handheld camera. I actually kind of discourage people from using this as a handheld camera because it becomes quite heavy once we start the full assembly process and have everything loaded onto this camera. It's not very friendly for handheld use unless you have a really significant rig that helps you with being a handheld package. We do have that one particular bracket available for a handheld shoulder mount. I don't know if it's going to be a whole lot of usefulness for us in this particular application. Okay, we've covered pretty much all the major components that we're going to utilize as far as assembly for the Red One package, and in just a second, we'll show you what it's like to put this thing all together. Right now, one of the very first things I'm going to do is take our mounting bars, our bottom mounting bars, and slide them through the brackets. Slide through as such. Remember, the mounting bars are the longer ones out of the 4 bars we have in the system. So we want to make sure that everything can kind of slide freely through our brackets. We can vary the length from one side to the other according to what we want to mount onto the camera. And we have some thumb screws that we just lock in place and lock those down. Here's our lens. We've already taken a look at what it is and how big it is and what the functions are. Again, we want to be mindful of the fact that it has these gears or these teeth to mount into our body. We also have these brass contacts that we want to make sure that they connect with the brass contacts in our body as well. So we loosen up our mounting ring. So we're going to simply mount in with our gears and lock it in place. And now I can begin the process of putting in my follow focus. Again, the follow focus goes right through this bracket right here. And now I can take my gear and begin to mesh it up against my focus ring and then lock this lever in place and then lock my mounting thumb screws in place. And I'm just going to maybe simply test the way that moves in the way the gears mesh together. You don't want them so tight that it's going to be very tight to move, and you don't want them so loose that it's going to skip any teeth between the gears. That looks pretty good in terms of how well they have meshed together. Now we'll hit our mat box. Again, we want to stick this ring on the back side of the box. So then we just put it onto our bracket as such and slide it in place till it kind of bottoms out against the lens. And we take and tighten up our thumb screws. So now we have our mat box in place, and we also have our follow focus in place. Let me flip it around just a touch. And now I'm going to insert my top mounting bars. Again, we can vary the length on the mounting bars. Kind of give the short end on this side. because we're not going to mount anything over the lens itself. So we're pretty much going to mount our storage and our battery on the back here. Now at this point, I'm going to turn this around just a bit so I can get my storage and a bracket in place in order to mount the storage on those top mounting bars. I'm going to take that bracket and begin to thread the bolt by hand. Take my proper sized Allen wrench and tighten it down. Okay, now we can take this bracket and just slide it over our top mounting bar. And now we have that in place. And again, we have some thumb screws to tighten that down. At the same time, I'll take one of my batteries and mount it, clicking in place and making sure it is ready to go. I can now take my mounts for the LCD and put it into this top bracket here. First starting it off by hand, screwing it down in place, and just doing it secure with the wrench. Same thing for my viewfinder bracket. Simply screwing it in place. And just a little tight tug on my 10mm wrench. From there, I can take my LCD screen and now I can put it up on its threaded mount and begin to thread that in place. And then I can just take that little thumb locking screw and lock that down. Now I'm going to screw in my viewfinder. As my viewfinder screws in place, being careful again of those first couple of threads to make sure they catch, and yeah, they catch there. Now I can lock it down with my thumb locking screw. Take my lever and lock it down, and my viewfinder and my LCD are in place. Now I can take my leads for my viewfinder and LCD and begin to connect those. Again, the connector here is going to be a red dot to red dot. Same thing on my LCD. It will be a red dot to red dot type of connection, like such. Now I can attach it to my body. Viewfinder is going to go to the top port. And my LCD is going to go to my bottom port. Now I can also attach my power button or my power cable to the back side of the camera. And I can also attach my data port from my drive to the back of the camera. So basically, as it sits, we have a fully assembled camera. I can kind of check the balance on it by unlocking my tilt lock and just seeing if the camera flops forward or flops back. And it looks fairly evenly balanced, and so I can just lock down my tilt lock in place. But again, we can just kind of double check ourselves and make sure that our thumb screws are properly tightened down, making sure once again that nothing is over tightened. And at this point, we can just simply go to our power button on the back of the camera here and power up the camera. And then it will take a few minutes for it to kind of go through its booting up process. And then we can start to program in the menu. So that's a look at the assembly of the Red One camera.